Hey everyone, CODI here with a new video, and in this one I'm going to rank my top 10 favorite characters in Punishing Gray Raven as of chapter 17 of Surviving Lucem. I'm currently taking a break from PGR because if I don't, I'm literally never going to finish Amphorius on HSR, where, to be blunt, I'd rather play PGR right now, but I do genuinely want to get through Amphorius, so I'm forcing myself to take a break from PGR so that I can do that. And actually, as of the day of this recording, I just finished the 3.1 patch. It was good. Either way, as a result, this feels like a good time to do a PGR-centered video that is not in the form of a media mosaic, because PGR has infested those for the last almost year. But the difference between this video and those ones is that in those videos, I'm more so talking about the content on offer itself, the chapters, the interludes, the events, stuff like that. I haven't really talked about my opinions on the actual characters themselves, so let's get this started with my honorable mentions, the people who didn't quite make my top 10. I did briefly consider all of Hassan, Asimov, and Celica my favorite Babylonian NPCs, but none of them made the cut. I really liked Martin for his dynamic with a certain other character. I think Selena and Ayla are fine for the most part, but I feel like I don't get enough of them yet, or I haven't gotten enough of them yet. Ishmael's a character I really have a lot of bias for since she's one of my main units and has been for a while at this point, but I can't really put her here just for that. Similar thing for the mermaid mommy, Lamia, but like I've seen a lot more of her in the story than Ishmael. It's still not enough to make my top 10, but I do expect that in the future chapters she could make the list given how much I liked her presence in chapter 15 and the surrounding content. Kanmu is a character who I really like as well, but I don't find myself thinking about him too much when he's not around. But really, none of those people were ever going to make the list. I do have three really big cuts, though. These three were all kind of fighting for that number 10 spot. In fact, one of them literally was originally on there, but then I moved them down. But this is basically like the real honorable mention section. Firstly, the first one I cut was Luna. I like Luna a lot. I think she has a lot of nuance to her, and for the first 13 chapters, she is a really interesting presence throughout. It just wasn't enough for me. I do expect her to cook more later, though, so we'll see. And I do know that at least one person will be very upset by this next one, but I did also cut Nanami. I find Nanami super fun. She's just as eccentric as Don Quixote and Limbus Company, and nowhere near as annoying. The problem with Nanami is pretty much the same issue I had with Luna. There's just not enough Nanami content yet. And yes, I know she'll be relevant in chapter 18. She's literally on the fucking cover. But again, this is pre chapter 18. I haven't read that yet, so I don't know about that. Another thing holding Nanami back is I just really don't take her that seriously yet, which is something that I would really want. I would want to take her seriously. I don't yet. And I can say with confidence that everybody that did make my top 10 or characters that I do genuinely take somewhat seriously. In the final cut, I actually did have this person at 10 for a while, but I did swap 10 and 11 on the list, so now at number 11 pretty much is Wanshi. I love Wanshi. I think he has a really good introduction to the story. They did a really good job of getting me on his side as quickly as they did. His dynamics with Chrome and Kamui are genuinely really fun, and his overtly lethargic nature is deeply relatable. I liked him a lot. But that's it for the honorable mentions. Now for the list proper. At number 10, the person who leapfrogged Wanshi, I have Lee. And for me, Lee's easily the worst character as of yet in the Grey Raven trio. I do like him a lot, and the thing that edged him out over Wanshi for me ended up being the church sequence in chapter 17. If it wasn't for that, I probably would have leaned Wanshi. Lee is still a fun presence, though. The way he bounces off of the Commandant, Lucia, and Liv is fun, and their banter does a lot of the heavy lifting. I'm glad Lee is in the main crew because he brings this more grounded approach and is also a high-key tsundere, which I find fucking hilarious. I think this is great. At number 9, we have a character who has multiple really great appearances, but those are appearances, don't happen as often as I'd like them to, so here we have Rosetta. And again, I love Rosetta. I find her awesome and cool as shit. Her whole ideology is one that I really like, where she talks about how both she herself and the world at large is one that is unlucky, only to later culminate in the scene in Fern Night where she tells the Commandant that it is quite lucky that she was able to catch him, and I love that scene. Getting to see this idea of luck have a positive connotation from Rosetta, of all people, when the entire focus of her character up to that point was about how unlucky everything is, it was cool. I liked it a lot. But again, I have a similar flaw to her that I do with the likes of Luna and Nanami, where we just don't get enough Rosetta. The difference is we get more Rosetta, and I think that out of the three of those, that she does have the best content. But if she had more content, I would have her higher. And I think it says a lot that pretty much my main flaw with Rosetta is that with it, there's not enough Rosetta content yet. At number 8, and I cannot believe this person is this low because of how high I was on them for a long while, But at 8, I bizarrely have Bianca, which is insane for me because pre chapter 12, Bianca was pretty easily number 2 on my list. I think at the beginning of PGR, it's really her and another character we'll talk about soon who did a lot of the heavy lifting for my own personal investment. I really liked the way her interludes intertwined with Watanabe's. The whole purifying force thing is cool to me. There's a particular line of hers that always stood out to me where she talks about how she no longer prays to the god she once served, but she still does continue the act of praying, praying to herself, seeking her answers not from above, but from within. I think for the early chapters, she's a very consistent presence, and I know we'll get more of her later, given the fact that I rock both the Stigmata and the uh, Crepuscule frames. What a name, man. At 7, and a similar thing. This chapter, even post chapter 12, was my number 1 character coming out of that chapter. But the 6 characters that are above them at this point were either introduced later or were characters who got a lot more expanded on than this one. So somehow, all the way at number 7, I have Watanabe. Again, like I said with Bianca, the way that they intertwine the interludes for these two characters is really great. And just like Bianca, he does a lot of the heavy lifting for my early investment in the series. The whole idea behind the Forsaken is awesome, and the more content we get on Watanabe, the more we realize that Watanabe is just a genuinely great guy. He does make some tough choices at points, but he is ultimately a great leader for the Forsaken. I think the reason I bumped him down is out of principle. That while I haven't gotten lower on him, I have gotten higher on others. At number 6, and I think this will be surprising to some, but I have a Roland. I think Roland has the third best interlude in the game. The whole double Truman Show thing that they do for his interlude is incredible, and it really ties into his character incredibly well. The fact that throughout the game he's been very theatric makes a lot more sense now after having read his interlude, and it's great. That's what a good interlude should do. The problem with Roland for me is actually his catharsis towards the end of that interlude, where he talks about how he will choose to live so that he can serve Luna, which in itself is actually really solid content. The problem is that 2 characters just do this better, and we won't be talking about them for a while. Still, I like Roland. I find him to be really entertaining. He's my second favorite antagonist throughout the game so far. And at the absolute bare minimum, I can't say he's boring. Jolly good show. Now for the top 5, and I ended up going with this person despite their screen time being pretty minimal at this point. I have 21. 21 has, in my opinion, the single greatest introduction in PGR. Granted, some of this is definitely helped by the fact that she's properly introduced in Inscription of Labyrinth, which for me is only behind the surviving Lucem. But then I would also argue that 21 herself is a part of what makes that chapter as well executed as it is. Her interlude was somehow on the more tragic end of PGR interludes, which is insane considering that they're the fucking tragedy Olympics already. I really like her dynamics with the Cerberus members and Vera and Noctis. I like her dynamic with the Grey Raven Commandant during and right after the Inscription of Labyrinth. Self-admittedly, the one reason that I wanted to put her lower was similar to the likes of Rosetta, where 21 really hasn't gotten all that much content yet, but the content that she has gotten is some of the best that the game has to offer, which is enough for me to have her as high as she is. And I will also mention that we are officially in the territory of my top 100 fictional characters. I did actually debate these next 2 spots for a while throughout my time playing the game. However, one of them just had the surviving Lucem. So at 4, I have Lucia, or Lucia, whatever you prefer. I've been calling her Lucia the whole time. I'm pretty sure that I'm canonically wrong. I'm pretty sure it is Lucia, but I'm still gonna say Lucia. I've been saying it for the past almost 200 hours now. Lucia, for me, is really hard to rank. Out of probably my entire top 10, Lucia's the most inconsistent for me, where I genuinely just did not care about her until Kowloon Metropolis. Granted, since that point, I've liked her a lot. But before we got there, I found her to be just kinda okay. The whole final showdown in chapter 12, though, was great. The Lucia versus Ku fight is incredible, and the emotional side of it was executed incredibly well. Baby's first peek, I know. Lucia sacrificing her memories while telling the Commandant that no matter what, she will always be Lucia is fantastic. Speaking of the Commandant, I would say Lucia has my favorite dynamic with them. And to circle back to the surviving Lucem, whilst it certainly boons another character more that we'll talk about shortly, it does also boon Lucia. Where, like I brought up with Lee, the whole church sequence was really great, but we also had the scene towards the end of Lucia attempting to save Liv. Throughout the game, we also got her dynamic with Alpha and Luna, which is great content. Again, the only issue with Lucia is my lack of care towards her pre-Chapter 12. Yet, even with the baggage she carries, she is still number 4 on this list. At number 3, I just heavily alluded to her a lot. We have the best member of the Grey Raven trio, Liv. And Liv is number 1 in that trio for a few facets. Firstly, up to chapter 12, she was my favorite member of the trio. She fell a bit thanks to our deuteragonist, Luciaing all over the place in Kowloon, but after chapter 17, yeah, Liv is back on top. Liv is just an incredibly consistent, pleasant presence throughout the story, perhaps the most consistent character in the game up to this point. Liv is this incredibly likable figure who has one of the best interpretations of altruism for me through her showing in chapter 17, which was rough, but Liv is definitely the star of the best chapter on offering as of yet. There's a hidden nuance and complexity to her that I really appreciate, and we see that in the surviving Lucem, and that was enough to give her a boost here. Now at 2, and I really wish I could say that I debated this, but I really didn't. I have Vera. Vera has my favorite ideology in the entire series so far, where she herself is really this symbol of pain and relishes in both her own pain as well as the pain of others. I think her monologue in the Rosen interlude is still my favorite monologue in the series, where she talks about how despite being battered, bruised, and bloody all over, she will live. She'll live on behalf of those who fell by her side, and that the pain she feels is the proof that she lives. She will live this life and bear the pain the departed cannot feel. It's one of my favorite moments in the series, probably my favorite moment across any of the interludes individually, despite being my second favorite interlude behind the Liv Imperia one. We also see her in the Garnet interlude, which, while not as good as Rosen for me, it was still really great for her. Having this Legend of Lloyd thing go on only for Vera to know the truth, and rather than tell the truth to all, chooses to be the villain, and ultimately the executioner when she dons the Garnet frame. We also get her content in 21's interlude, where 21 views Vera as an angel only for Vera to scoff at that notion. We get the batshit crazy CG in the Grand Blue Extra story. We get her asking the Commandant if he wants her to show him her female side later. We get her dynamics with Noctis in 21. We get her dynamic with Roland. Look, all in all, Vera is an incredible character. I find her so fun. I think that they're really able to have their cake and eat it too when it comes to Vera, where I genuinely do believe that Vera is a well written character, but she's also just super funny. Probably the most entertaining character in the game for me. Lastly, at number 1, and again, I wish I could say I debated this, but I really didn't. One for me is not particularly close. It's Alpha. In truth, I think I can properly articulate why I like Vera in comparison to Alpha. But Alpha's just so fucking cool, man. I love her dynamic with Lucia, especially the development within the dynamic from chapters 1 to 14. I also really like the initial mystery. Seeing this doppelganger of Lucia is really cool. We get her fight with Gabriel, which is awesome. We get her dynamic with Luna, which only gets more depressing the more you learn about it. We get her dynamic with Roland, which I find to be genuinely hilarious. The way that they bounce off of each other is perfect. We get her slow but constant growth and respect towards the Grey Raven Commandant. We get her dynamic with Rosetta, which was awesome. We get the You Know Nothing scene in chapter 13, which always sticks out to me, especially when also taking into account the moment in chapter 14 where she talks to Lucia about how now she's at the starting point. That it's really cool. I like that a lot. All in all, I think a bulk of what puts Alpha this high is the Faust effect, where for those who don't know, spoilers in case I ever do a center ranking for Limbus Company, but Faust is my favorite character in that game. It's not founded on too much, given that we still don't even have her own canto yet. I can't properly explain it, okay? I really like the character, and the same is true here with Alpha. But that is my ranking of my top 10 favorite characters across Punishing Grey Raven. That's the first 17 chapters. I might do this for other series eventually down the line, and I will probably revisit this video again when I catch up to Punishing Grey Raven. But as always, take care, y'all.